It will be no exaggeration to say that my today's guest wears multiple hats in order to scale his organization to ambitious goals and help the organization achieve all those ambitious goals. Hello, everyone. Welcome to People Led Show by Infido, where I am interviewing CHROs from Southeast Asia region. My name is Pawan Rochwani, and today on the show, I have John, who's currently the head of organizational development, talent management, culture, engagement, and communications at JGSummit Holdings. I'm sure if you are from the Philippines or the Southeast Asia region, you must have heard of GG Summit or also about John. And he's somebody who wears multiple hats at the organization. And he's someone who doesn't just understand the intricacies of the HR function, but also excels in talent management strategies, the nuances of shaping workplace culture, and the art of fostering engagement and effective communication, and at the same time, creating a psychological safe space for all the employees. This is a conversation that I've been really looking forward to. And I'm so glad that John gave us his time for this recording. And I hope all of you who are going to listen to this and watch this will enjoy this equally. Please feel free to drop any comments and we'd be happy to take your suggestions. And this conversation was pre recorded. So some of the context from the episode might be of the month of December 2023. But I hope you all enjoy this. Superb. Thank you so much, John, for taking out the time to do this conversation with us. We are very, very thrilled and excited to have you on our show. And I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
I'm very happy to be here. So yeah, let's do this.
John, so to begin with, of course, we're going to talk a lot about the HR division and how the industry is shaping up. What are the challenges that are going on and everything? But before we get into all of those things, we also want to know who is John outside of work and what are you doing when you're not at the office or when you're not thinking about your employees? What are you doing outside of work?
Yeah, so I'm married and I have one child. She's 2 years old. So majority of my time is actually spent with my little girl. So we always on weekends try to find time to bond. So we go to zoos, we go to parks, we go to amusement parks, just anything that would allow us to spend a lot of time together. So
Wow.
yeah, I'm a fairly simple guy. I mean, I don't really do much outside of work except spend time with my family.
That's also equally important. So that's definitely great. Um, how about why don't we start with you describing the people strategy of JG Summit? Like what is the vision or what is your mantra or motto that you follow as a people strategy at the organization?
So for the whole of Gokongwei Group, we have a twofold people strategy. Uh, we want to be able to deliver exceptional employee experience while building the org of the future. So it sounds deceptively simple, but it's actually such a tall order for all of us because it's so easy to get caught up in all of these latest trends, latest technologies that you could forget the basics. So we always have to ensure that the basics are the ones that impact the employee experience the most. So we need
Yeah,
to be able to cover that in a very, very good way.
yeah. No, no, definitely it sounds simple to hear, but executing that in thousands of employees is a
Yeah.
really, execution challenge sometimes. So I definitely understand that it might sound simple, but it's really, really deep. Um, and a lot of times when we are following these mottos and missions, there is a challenge, and I've been an entrepreneur, so I've faced this myself sometimes. Is how do you strike the balance between okay, you want to set high performing employees and high expectations, but at the same time you also want to be supportive and create that safe space environment as well. Like somebody shouldn't feel like okay, no, this is too much of burnout for me and too much of work for me. So how do you balance like the high performance as well as being supportive as a leader?
The first thing you need to do is understand the dynamics of how an individual and teams operate within a system. how processes, policies, and systems can impact performance and motivation. So
Hmm.
once you understand that, you can design a performance culture that motivates people to do their best work while allowing them to bring their whole selves at work every day. So if I were to maybe illustrate it for you, if you can recall a time when you felt like you were at your peak performance. So
Hmm.
what were the key driving factors? Was it the clarity of goals? Was it having a supportive boss and team? Was it being in a space where you felt like you belonged? So, in my experience, you always design with the individual in mind, knowing that each individual has different motivation, has different triggers as well, and then curate experiences and systems around the individual that will enable peak performance.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. And just out of curiosity, you have been in the business for quite some time, and what is some of the ways that you have achieved success with respect to employee engagement and bringing that business effectiveness through people? Like, I'm sure being flexible as a work culture, as an environment, all of those things are now like the basics and the new normal. But what have been some things that are like your success mantras for great employee engagement?
So, first things first, you need to understand how money is made in an organization.
Yeah.
So, for you to be able to drive organizational effectiveness, you need to know how the money is made. You
Mm.
don't necessarily have to be like a finance expert or like be the operations expert, but you need to understand how the money moves within the organization. Once you have a good understanding of that, you know exactly how you can enable that through your people initiatives, and of course, listening to the people is always very important. And like what I've said earlier, you need to be brilliant at the basics. You need to
Yeah.
be very brilliant at the basics, but you need to also you need to remain open to new ways of approaching old problems.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you just throw, let's say, more people to a problem, or throw a pizza party because engagement scores are lower and stuff like that. I mean, there has to be a level of openness to approach old problems with new and innovative ways. But don't forget to have fun as well. I mean, it's such a cliche, but when you don't really have fun at work, I mean, it's going to be such a burden going to
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. I think getting those basics right and um, having that fun with work is also very, very equally important. And I think one thing that has worked out well for me in the past has been
Mhm.
a lot of times an employee would, come and just give me feedback about how about we change this thing
Right.
instead of making it like Monday blues. Why don't we make it like Mondays are for fun? And I think those small feedbacks sometimes changed a lot about our culture. But have you also experienced this, that some small feedbacks can really change and improve the culture of the org or make your org very people centered? How do you like look at feedback in general?
Most organizations have very traditional ways of gathering feedback, right? You
Mm.
do town halls, you do your engagement surveys, and you do all of these things. But what I've also found to be impactful is just talking to people without any sort of agenda. Just checking in people, making sure that you communicate to them that you want to get to know them as individuals. And that's when the magic happens most of the
Yeah.
time. You get
Yeah.
to understand people's motivation beyond your day to day work. Because, I mean, the premise is that nobody goes to work and says, I'm going to do a bad job today. I mean, nobody ever does that, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wakes up, goes to work, and has at least a fundamental objective to deliver what they're supposed to deliver that day. But
Yeah.
then people are not machines. And having worked for more than 2 decades already, I've also realized that while it's such a cliche to say, you need to know your people, you need to empathize with people, you need to make people feel that you're not dealing them you're like machines. and
Yeah.
and it's always a game changer for me when you're able to be, or you're able to foster like a constant feedback loop with people, whether it be in terms of formal channels, that you currently have, or just having water cooler conversations or your regular one-on-ones with your teams as well?
Yeah, I think water cooler conversations I have personally enjoyed. Like it's just a candid way to know what's going on in their lives, and just build a friendly rapport also, and not just keep always that hierarchy within the
Yeah.
culture that okay, no, I am a director and you are a manager and stuff like that. So I think those things are really important.
But there's just another thing that I wanted to highlight, because I've
Yeah.
worked in a European multinational as well, and that's when I realized that you also have to assess the level of familiarity that you can establish with your
Oh
workmates.
yeah.
Some people are not comfortable discussing personal their
Yeah.
personal lives. Some people apparently don't want to be greeted on their birthday because it's such an emotionally loaded
Yeah.
event for them. Other people don't want to celebrate holidays and stuff like that. So it's really also about having that intelligence about
Yeah.
how to facilitate conversations in a manner that is always positive for individuals that you're interacting with.
Yeah.
Because I was just having this conversation with a friend, and uh, this particular friend was telling me that they were asking about how the weekend was like for this workmate who's from a different culture, and the workmate was super surprised. Why are you asking me that question? I mean, why do you want to know what I did over the weekend?
Oh
And that's like super common for Asians.
yeah.
We normally start our Monday meetings with a question like, "How was your weekend? What did you do over
Yeah.
the weekend?" But you never realize could be such a sensitive topic for
Yeah.
other people.
Yeah, yeah. Glad I learned this today. Anytime I'm meeting a European colleague, I'm not gonna ask them how their weekend was. So definitely gonna keep that in mind. John, tell us a little bit about how your team is structured, and like what are certain goals that you folks are deciding for 2024.
Mhm.
Are you trying to think about? I'm sure everybody is now thinking about adopting AI and automations and all those things, but how's your team structured and what you folks are planning for the next year?
So I work for the holdings company of the Gokongwei Group. And so our clients are the employees in the corporate center units, and the HR teams across the group as well. So one of our key mandates in 2024 and even beyond is to start developing our consulting practice at the center. So another would be this drive to build thought leadership at the center. So
Mm.
thought leadership could be as simple as knowledge management, just making sure that all the different HR teams across the group have access to, let's say, a centralized catalog of all the learning
Yeah,
interventions that we have, to as complex as really pushing new trends, new ways of thinking and working, so that our different businesses who are at different stages of maturity as organizations could really benefit from the knowledge base that we have within the group.
got it. And coming to my last section of questions, and this is more about just some futuristic aspects and also what do you think
Mhm.
about the industry in general. The
Mhm.
first question being what do you think makes a great people leader and a great HR leader? Are there certain traits or let's say skills that are like must haves according to you?
Well, for me, a great HR leader, or any leader for that matter, knows how to support, number one, the delivery of business goals.
Hmm.
A leader also needs to listen to the organization and has the capability to inspire people to deliver the best work of their lives. So it sounds like a lot of fluffy statements, but really, if you think about it, for you to be able to support the delivery of business goals, you need to understand the ins and outs of the business. When you listen to the organization, you need to have that level of authenticity that you really want to
Yeah.
know what people need and are sincere about creating meaningful solutions for them. And
Yeah.
finally, being an inspiring leader takes a lot of work. You
Yeah.
need to work on your authenticity, you need to work on your personal effectiveness as well. And more importantly, you need to make sure that you put people first. I've been trying my best to be a servant leader, meaning lead alongside my people, because I grew up in a generation wherein leaders are revered, are leading from the front, leading the charge. But then I've also noticed that working with the new generation of professionals, one way to truly inspire and engage them is that you make them feel that you are with them, and that you're not just giving commands and you're not just asking them or telling them what they're supposed to do. You
Yeah.
are actually going to be there when you need to get your hands dirty, you need to roll up your sleeves and do the
Yeah.
dirty work as needed.
Yeah. And I think that generational diversity, we'll have to embrace it in the coming years because I
Yeah.
remember I read this article, I think it was in New York Times or the Atlantic, where it talked about how to keep our offices ready for the Gen Z. And
Mhm.
it talked about what workplace changes we will have to bring in because it's really different from what, let's say, the millennials or the Gen X and all those folks have been. So that's an interesting piece that I had also read. Um,
Yeah, I was just attending a workshop a few months ago with a whole bunch of leaders within the Gokongwei group, and we had a session with a consulting firm wherein they brought some Gen Zs to talk with us, some of the top leaders of the organization, and we were able to ask them a lot of questions around, their motivation, and had the opportunity to get them to dispel some of the preconceived notions that we had of Gen Zs, such as they are loyal to themselves and not to a company. They're
mm,
loyal to their own development and all these things. And it was so insightful because at the end of the day, what I personally realized was the fact that while there are some generational stereotypes, you still need to ensure you look at people as individuals,
yeah,
with different circumstances, different motivations, and really different ways of thinking and working. And so, while we need to be aware of some of these generalized stereotypes about Gen Zs, it all boils down to just making sure that you design with the individual in mind. Also employing concepts of design thinking, always thinking about the edge customers, edge users of whatever it is that you'll push, both from an HR standpoint or how you will design your policies and processes.
yeah, yeah. No, definitely. I think there have been very interesting theses and theories about how to adapt the generational diversity. And I have also been attending a lot of sessions virtually and in person as well. And I think it's a very interesting trend that's going to come up, and it's I'm very excited to see how organizations are going to adapt to that because now literally we'll have three different generations working together, three or four actually.
Right.
That's definitely a very exciting thing to like witness. um, John, what do you think are some, let's say, philosophies or methods that you have as an HR leader that probably other people don't agree with you, or they have counter thoughts about it? What are
Mhm.
some of such philosophies or methods that you have?
So I did think about this after reading the question that you sent over, and there are two things I wanted to highlight. Most HR teams measure attrition and measure engagement, and have pegged this as very good predictors of successful initiatives around retention, motivation, and engagement. But I personally don't believe that attrition is a bad thing. With how the workplace has evolved over the past decades, attrition should not be vilified in such a way that, of course, it's a different thing when attrition is really caused by poor management or poor
Yeah,
culture. But when it's all about people just trying to pursue their purpose in life, trying to find the best places where they can thrive in, I don't necessarily think that attrition is a bad thing.
yeah,
Also, you have to keep in mind that some economies are more active than others. So, for example, in the Philippines and in other parts of Asia, a lot of startups keep on coming, businesses keep on expanding, and it really becomes an employee centric economy. So, attrition now becomes a bit of an outdated measure to to say whether or not you're doing a great job at
Yeah.
motivating your employees. The other thing is engagement scores, and a lot of people have been saying this thing as well. I mean, once a year engagement surveys don't really do much. I mean, and they don't really say a lot. And so in our organization, the goal is to be able to truly identify moments that matter
Yeah.
by listening to the employees at all the different stages of the talent management lifecycle,
Yeah.
getting real-time feedback whenever you onboard somebody, whenever you provide a particular HR service, or just after every event or initiative, you institutionalize a way of listening and getting real-time feedback. So even the smallest feedback could help you pivot in a manner that is quite meaningful and impactful to the employees in your organization. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I was just thinking about my time as well. So the very first job that I did in my life, it was no fault of the management or anybody. I just wanted to pursue something of my own, and
Mhm.
that attrition is probably not the reason of the organization. It's just my own purpose that I wanted to fulfill. So I definitely agree that sometimes attrition is looked up as like mislooked actually,
Mhm.
because people can have their own reasons as well sometimes. So I'm
Mhm.
glad that that's a very bold, and actually I'm glad that's coming out in this conversation. So I'm really happy about that. um my last question, and I would have loved to keep talking to you more, but maybe we'll do a part two or some other time when I'm in Philippines. Um, who are some of the organizations that you have, like, or some CHROs or HR leaders from Philippines that you personally have like admired, or that okay, these guys are doing like really well. This organization is really people centric and people first,
Mhm.
that you have like noticed and observed?
Not necessarily just in the Philippines, but I would say Grab is a pretty people-centric organization. Uh, Inclusion is in their DNA for sure. So the way they design the business is really to be able to solve everyday problems that Asians face. And so even in the people strategy of Grab, it shows that it's as people centric as it could
Yeah,
be. Another organization that's quite people centric, albeit in a different manner or in a more traditional manner, is San Miguel Corporation. I
oh
mean,
yeah,
it's one of the biggest corporations in Asia Pacific. They've celebrated more than 100 years of
yeah,
success. And they've also done a lot of pivots. They've bought companies, they've sold these companies, they've devolved functions to their business units and have centralized functions as well so many times that I think they've hacked how to build brand loyalty, how to build org affinity without having to do so many different things at the same time if you know what I mean. So Sunwing
yeah,
is quite a good organization as well. And then I'll be biased and say my boss is actually a good example of how somebody who hasn't been in HR his whole life
yeah,
has pivoted to become the chief HR officer of JGSummit Holdings, and it's really introducing new ways of looking at the function. He's leading the charge around us evolving into a consulting organization and a thought leader in so many ways than one, so that we could serve our business units in a meaningful manner.
yeah, yeah. No, I'm glad, and I've also personally, not as an employee but as a customer, definitely Grab has been like a very people centric and customer centric organization. I've personally felt that. But I'm glad we talked about this. And John, I want to thank you once again for giving us your time and doing this conversation. And sometimes you don't realize where half an hour has passed by because it's been a great conversation. So I'm really, really happy that we managed to do this. And
Right.
next time I'm definitely in Manila or you're in India, we'll meet up in person.
For sure, that'll be great. I mean, thanks as well for allowing me to have this conversation with you. It was a great exercise for me. I haven't been granting interview requests and the likes because I've been quite busy, and I really felt like it was too cheesy for me. But then having this conversation, the preparation that leading to it, and giving myself time to reflect on who I am as a leader and what I've seen to be effective and boosting org effectiveness. So it was a good experience for me as well. I mean, if it could help one or two HR practitioners out there, I'd feel very fulfilled that I've done a great, albeit a very simple thing.
I'm sure not one or two HR leaders, but hundreds of them are going to benefit from this conversation. And I'm damn sure about that. But thank you so much once again, John. I think I thoroughly enjoyed this as well. And yes, probably in-person coffee is pending for us the next time whenever we meet.
For sure. Thanks, Pawan.